It's a game of musical chairs, okay? So, I mean, you can imagine us getting together and playing a game of musical chairs. You know how you play, the music plays, and there's how many people here? 50 people, but only 45 chairs are set up. And so when the music turns off, then everybody rushes for a chair, and if you're without a chair, then you lose and you're out of the game, okay? So once upon a time, there was a big game of musical chairs like this. They made it more interesting though. Hundreds of people, but a few less chairs than that, 5% less chairs. But if you miss a chair, if you don't get a chair, not only are you out of the game, but you lose your house, and you can't feed your kid, and you don't get medical care. All right? Make the game interesting. And then, so the music stops, and everybody goes for the chair, and you see people pushing and elbowing and shoving and just this free-for-all because people are desperate to get a chair. And maybe a few altruistic souls forego their chair and let the pregnant mother have the chair instead. Those are the altruistic exceptions to the general rule of human nature. And watching this melee is a committee consisting of an economist, a politician, priest. How about a priest? Well, that'll count as the economist. There's some viewers, you know, and a biologist. Let's say that too. And the economist says, look at that. Human nature maximizing rational self-interest, that proves it. And the biologist says, yep, that's what it is. Just like in nature, maximizing reproductive self-interest, red in tooth and claw. And the politician says, yeah, lucky thing to have us around to keep order. Otherwise, they tear themselves apart. We make some rules, at least, that they can't kill each other for the chairs. And the priest says, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go in there and convince them to be nicer to each other, instill some morality. What nobody is asking, and what we have to ask, is who decided that there were going to be less chairs than there are people? And this translates into the debt question, because if you haven't noticed, our current economy looks very much like that game of musical chairs. And it doesn't matter how, I mean, you can be a nice person and forego your chair and be really generous and support others and not try to exploit them. But then you end up without a chair. You end up without the ability to make a living, to pay for food, to pay for all the things that are no longer provided by a gift economy. So this obviously does not serve the people who are left out. It does not serve the people who are desperately striving to keep their heads above water and make their debt payments. And ironically, it doesn't even serve the people at the top of the pyramid. They get a substitute for real wealth. If that's all there is, then yeah, you're better off at the top of the pyramid than at the bottom. But does it have to be a pyramid? What happens if you organize the game differently? What if you have an equal number of chairs as people? Then there's still maybe some competition. Maybe some of the chairs are more comfortable for some people than others. Some are higher. Some are good for people with long legs, you know. So people like different chairs. There's some trade. There might still be some competition, but it won't be baked into the rules of the game like it is now. And it's simply because of the way that money is created as interest-bearing debt, which means more debt than there is money. And I don't know, it feels like a bit too lectury to explain that. People used to have no idea, and now it's pretty well known how money is created. So I'm not going to really bother to go through that whole process. But basically what it means is that we're always in competition with each other for never enough money. I'd like to talk about reversing that, and also to make it maybe appropriate, like relevant on a local level, not just on a systems level. On a systems level, I mean, we could talk about negative interest systems. We could talk about other monetary systems that are not created as interest-bearing debt. And that gets all kinds of details that are not interesting to everybody here. So I'm probably not going to talk about them a lot. But you know, for negative interest systems, there's a problem with centralized control. And anyway, it's a rather long discussion. But I do want to talk about reversing this progression of life into money, of relationships into services, and of nature into products that has been going on for a very long time. I'll relate that to the game of musical chairs. Because money is lent into existence. If I'm a bank, who am I going to lend money to? Am I going to lend it to Josie, who wants to start a revolution roll call? And I'm like, okay, that sounds beautiful, Josie. So you want $500,000? What's your business plan to pay me back? Are you going to be charging people a lot of money for a revolution roll call? it sounds great, but, how are you going to pay me back? Don't have a business plan. Okay, sorry, I guess I really can't lend you that money, even though I'd like to, because the bank has got to make a profit. I'm in competition with other banks, and there's regulators looking over my shoulder, et cetera, et cetera. And ultimately, it goes down to we're all compete. Like, this bank is not alone in competing for never enough money. Instead, I will find someone else. Like, maybe you have a business plan, which is, like, there's this wetlands out there, and I'm gonna pave it over and build a strip mall. And I'm like, let me see your business plan. And you show me the numbers. I'm like, yeah, that looks pretty good. There's money in that. And you're like, maybe you're even like, Charles, I really don't want to do that, but, my other business plan didn't get a loan, so here we are. And so, okay, so basically, here's the general principle. I, the bank, or really the entire financial system in aggregate, will lend money to those investments that are going to be able to pay them back, that are going to be able to generate even more money. And that's how the whole system works. More and more money has to be lent into existence to pay back the interest on the previously lent money, which means the economy has to grow and grow and grow forever. Otherwise, it stops working. And when it stops working, you get defaults, you get depression, you get economic depression, you get layoffs, you get investment freezing up. So the government is under huge pressure to maintain a positive rate of return on capital. They set up the whole system to facilitate people like me lending money to people like Greg. So that's how the game of musical chairs is related to endless growth. And that is why, over the course of my lifetime, more and more has entered the money realm. And now we have a chance to go the other direction, to reclaim life from money. And that part of that is on a systems level. Like all those beautiful organizations that Aaron showed us, they're kind of going against the current. Not everybody can do that in the current system. A systems change is necessary too. However, what these companies and organizations and individuals are doing is they're creating a template for a different kind of economy. And they're normalizing a different way of thinking. And they're creating relationships that are kind of on the margins of the dominant system now, but if and when the dominant system freezes up and collapses, or there's a moment of crisis where we awaken to the choice that is actually inherent in our systems that we have been blind to, then we have the seed of something new.